Welcome to the Coffee and Technology Podcast. Today we speak with Wilford Lamastus Jr. Wilford is the son of world-renowned Panamanian coffee producer Wilford Lamastus. Wilford has grown his coffee career as a next-generation coffee producer, cafe owner, and coffee competitor. In this storytelling episode, Wilford tells the story of Panama's growth in coffee, the brand building of Panamanian Geisha, and the role his family holds in the world of specialty coffee production in Panama. Enjoy. This is exciting, man. Norbert, we're back to origin with a very famous name today. And super excited to learn the stories of Panama and Geisha coffee and hear more about it.
Oh yeah, Nick, I'm super excited, and this is one of our probably second times we venture into origin lands, right very close to the equator. So let's the tension is rising. Who is it?
Wilford Lamastus Jr. Welcome to the podcast, man. It's super exciting to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here too.
Yeah, welcome.
Just to get it going, let's hear a little bit about the Lamastus story. Like I would say like the Lamastus legacy of Panama. A little bit about you. You're on the global stage now of coffee competitions, but let's hear a little bit more about just Lamastus, the name.
Oh yeah, okay. I wanna try to make it quick. So my great-grandfather was working in the Panama Canal Zone. So that's how the Lamastus family story starts in the coffee industry. He's originally from Kentucky. He's working in the Panama Canal Zone. And then he reads an article about a place that has a better weather than Panama City, or a chillier weather than Panama City. So he goes, visits, and he likes it. When he retires, instead of going back home, he decided, you know what, let's go to this place, few people, nice weather, a lot of green, a lot of mountains, and he built a farm where the farm was already producing coffee, and he decided to settle there for his retirement. My great-grandfather married a local lady, and that local lady is my great-grandma, where they had 5 kids, including my grandfather. From the 5 kids they had, so my great-grandfather passed away young. My grandfather was only 2 when his father passed away. So my great grandma, her name was Elida. That's why we call it our main farm is Elida Estate. My great grandma was the one in charge of the farm until her kids grew up. So my grandfather was 2. His brother was 6 when their father passed away. So when they both went to college, they came back and they started helping the mom in the coffee industry. But for about 20 years, she was the one in charge of the coffee farm. And it was very weird back then because no female was in charge of coffee farms back then in these parts of the world. It's Latin America, female in charge of the farms. She was probably the only female doing that. So it was a pretty big deal. She was able to keep it up, to grow it. She was able to form together with the other male farmers a co-op so they could process their coffee, sell it, export some of it. So my grandfather and my grandfather's brother grew up, came back from university, and started working in coffee. Unfortunately,
what time was that? What year?
50s. Yeah, early 50s, late 40s. Unfortunately, my grandfather's brother passed away young. He was around 40 or something. So my grandfather is the only one in charge of the coffee farms now. We're talking about the 70s. About this time, his sisters, they all married Americans and moved to the United States. None of them stayed in the highlands of Panama. So my grandfather is the one in charge of the coffee farms, working in coffee. My grandmother's side also had coffee. So my grandfather was working in his family's coffee project alongside his father-in-law's coffee project. So he was working fully in coffee. My grandfather was also in charge of doing the quota system. I don't know if you know the quota system is what the International Coffee Organization had for the International Coffee Agreement, where all the coffee was sold at an agreed price. So my grandfather, Thatcher, was in charge of negotiating on behalf of his co-op, which was the one in the region of Boquete, and also collecting the money for the producers. So he did that for a few years, and until 1989, that the deal was broken. But by 1989, I was being born. My father was getting to start working in coffee, and he started working in coffee when the biggest crisis of coffee hit Panama. When the agreement was broken, Panama was the immediate victim of this, because we have Costa Rica on one side, we have Colombia on one side. Both countries produce a lot much more coffee than Panama. They are exporting more coffee than Panama. They are better known than Panama. They have lower wages than Panama. So all the production costs and all the knowledge from the outside world was bigger in Costa Rica and Colombia than it was in Panama. So in 1991, around that time, my father and a few colleagues, they began to sit down and say, what are we going to do? Coffee is not enough. So let's say, we're talking about my grandfather already being a 60-plus-year-old man. He was already on his pension. He was working in coffee. He doesn't have any dependents. His kids are already grown. So my grandfather is in a comfortable position. Coffee is crashing in Panama. My father has 2 young kids, and he's in a different position in his life. He's in his early 30s, and he needs to do something. He decided to work with his father, along with his brother. But his brother, he quickly moved away to another production. My uncle was a trout producer for many, many years. So my dad was working in coffee, and then they realized that this is not working. Around this time, because of the agreement and because of everything, the United States is the first one getting out of the agreement. The United States let a few producers in Central America basically abandon, because they were not able to make any profit on coffee. Coffee prices plummeted. So about this time, there's an association created called Grexpan, which is I don't know how to say gremio in English, but it's like a groupation of products that were non-traditional products for exports. My father was doing onions, so he was doing onions back then, and he was exporting onions. He still had some coffee, but that was not the main business. He tried to do other crops too, but didn't work. None of them worked. The reason why it doesn't work is because Panama starts producing onions. Then Panama has a small window to export the onions, because the United States is not producing onions in certain months. And then Nicaragua starts producing onions as well. Nicaragua has the same season as Panama. And then Panama loses that gap to export, because Nicaragua is doing it for a lot cheaper. And then Panama has no way to compete. So Panama starts selling the onions locally, but even the imported onions from the United States were cheaper in Panama than the local onions in Panama. So that puts in a situation, very complicated situation. My father travels in 1994 to Washington, D.C., in the World Trade offices, to previous to the free trade agreement Panama and the United States had, to talk about this. So my father travels with this guy, which is he's a former senator in Panama. They call it legislators. A former senator in Panama, who was in charge of the commissions for agricultural products. They travel to Washington, D.C. They are trying to negotiate the onions situation and other products. There's no real good news coming out of those meetings. They are meeting in from the hotel, for a coffee. They traveled together from Panama. They knew each other from before. Families are both from the agricultural side. They go and have a coffee in a Starbucks. And then the Starbucks, some Starbucks still do in the United States, has like a board in the wall that says Panama La Florentina. And there's like an artisanal indigenous art called the mola, which is a very famous Panamanian Panamanian Colombian art. And then they saw that and they say, oh, look at this. This is Panama, La Florentina. It happens to be the legislator's grandfather's farm, who was living in the United States at the time and knew some of the buyers from Starbucks, so was able to sell coffee to Starbucks earlier than other producers in Panama were selling their coffee at a better price. And that blew their minds. They went and walked to the pharmacy. I don't know if it's CVS or Walgreens or something similar. They got a camera, one of these Kodak's disposable cameras. They took pictures of it. They took a bunch of pictures, and they were blown. The other guy was blown because it's his grandfather's farm. He didn't know about this. My father's blown because he saw that opportunity. You know what? Farm names from Panama have a potential. Let's remember, this is 1994. Starbucks is probably the number one coffee company you could think of back then. Like, if you were able to sell your coffee to Starbucks, you made it. And then Starbucks was using the name of the coffee farm. Starbucks still uses the regions, but some cases they use the name of the coffee farm. So in that moment, they were using the name of the coffee farm. So that was big for them. They came back to Panama. My father comes. So I'm talking about legacy. You know, this is probably the turning point of Lamastus' legacy, which is what we are living today. So my father comes back to Panama, call his colleagues from the Grexpan, that gremio from the exporting products, and says most of them were former coffee producers. Same stories, similar stories from families, let's say the Coiner family, the Collins family, former coffee producers. Calls them and say, hey, we need to get together because we need to start talking about coffee, specialty coffee. So what should we do? They start talking about it. They start talking about it with my grandfather and the older generation. The older generation is basically like, I don't think this is going to work. So
that's typical of the older generation.
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about
that always happens.
We're talking about my father, who was about 35 years old back then, 34 years old. Ricardo Coiner, which is about 30 years old back then. Hans Collins, about 34 years old back then, who was the former owner of Finca Lerida. For those who don't know, Lerida is a coffee farm next to ours. And there is, so they, and a few other young guys, but these are the main three. The main three that got together and said, let's do it. Let's do this commission for a specialty coffee. And they say, we need somebody to help us, somebody to guide us, somebody to open some doors for us. So there is this gentleman in Panama who was there a few decades before, friends of my grandfather, friends of the family, well-known American guy in the town, Mr. Price Peterson. Mr. Price Peterson is a milk producer. His main business is milk. They have high-quality milk, and they had lands for coffee, and they started growing in their coffee site. So they go to Mr. Price and say, Mr. Price, we're doing coffee. We are doing this. We need somebody to help. And Mr. Price Peterson said, you know, guys, this is great. This is an amazing idea. I will help you. But one thing, forget about the commission. You need to create the Specialty Coffee Association of Panama. And they immediately did. By 1995, they were creating the first association linked to a United States, to the Specialty Coffee Association of America, the SCAA, formerly SCAA, now SCA, the first country that had a link directly to that association. So that's when they formed it. The first trip they had, a few coffee producers got in a bus, traveled from Panama, from Boquete to San Jose, Costa Rica, for an event called Sinter Cafe. They go to Sinter Cafe in a bus, low budget. They come to the SCA. This is 1996. They go to the SCA booth and they say to the SCA guys, hey, we just formed the Specialty Coffee Association of Panama, but we have no money. And we want to go to the next expo, which is in New Orleans. And the SCAA said, you know what, guys, you have all the paperwork? Yeah, we do. We have the paperwork here. We have the president. We have the board of directors. We have a space for you. We have a space for you for free. So I'm going to try to tell the story about this first expo. My father, the Coiners, the Petersons, a few others, the Collins, traveled to New Orleans. Their booth was decorated with something they printed in what used to be FedEx Kinkos. in the fake skin because they printed the thing. So they were sponsored by DHL. DHL was gonna transport all the brochures, but there was a mixed up with the address. So DHL got lost. So by the moment they were gonna open the expo, they had no brochure to print because the printing of the whole booth was the brochure open. The brochure open was the printing of the whole booth. So one guy had the brochure in the pocket. I think it was my uncle, had the brochure in his pocket, folded. So they took that one because it was the only option they had. DHL was lost, and they printed. And then when you went to the booth, you could see the line in the middle of the folded brochure. But that was the first year they had it. It failed, and they had to put it back. It was a crazy year. So all this legacy began in that moment. Big part of the legacy, I'm talking about a mix between my father, my grandfather, all the family, the Petersons, and also a CAP, SCAP. About this time, they created the association. They have the competition of the Best of Panama. How the Best of Panama competition began. There was a cupping competition that happened nationally in Hawaii. That competition in Hawaii, they were doing it with an art competition. There was a cupping competition along with an art competition, and they say, "Yo, let's copy this. Let's do the same in Panama." One thing that helped a lot the Panamanian producers is that one Panamanian producer, a really good friend of my father, my great grandfather, Mario Serracin, used to work. He used to live in Kona for his PhD. So he was working with producers in Kona in Hawaii. He was doing his PhD for the University of Hawaii in coffee. So he was getting information ahead. Let's remember something. Kona is a United States state. So Kona is getting better research money, research ideas. Everything is better established than it was in Latin America or Africa at the time. So he was helping them with information when they were creating the Specialty Coffee Association. One of this important information was the idea to create a cupping competition that will help raise awareness of the Panamanian product and help the Panamanian producers. So they began with the Specialty Coffee Association, Best of Panama competition. The first year they had the art thing. The second year they dropped the art thing and they concentrated only in coffee.
Was Best of Panama did it always start with geisha or
no
did it eventually?
Okay, we are in 1997. This is the year 1997.
Okay.
Best of Panama number 1, then Best of Panama number 2, 1998. Best of Panama number 3, 1999. There's no auction yet. There's also no geisha yet. I want to do a little bit of a flashback for the geisha story. So I'm gonna.
Can we just briefly, before we go into the geishas, I wanted to touch on the specialty coffee element because you mentioned it on the side, kind of on the side a little bit, because ultimately it's about the product. So how did Panama go from like the volumes they had before and the more probably commercial coffee they produced to a specialty product? How did that work?
Cupping. That's the first thing. They started cupping. So how do we do this? How do we know it's special? How do we know we are doing something good? Cupping. And then they started training themselves cupping all together. All the producers together, they were cupping, learning how to cup. More members were starting to join the Specialty Coffee Association of Panama, people with a little bit of experience, and then they started cupping. And by cupping, they realized, okay, let's pick the coffee separate. Let's not pick all the sites, all the regions in the farm together. Let's just separate it by lots. So they started copying. By doing this, they started realizing that they could have a special product without mixing the different lots or different farms. So,
but they were still using the same varieties and the same plants they had before.
Yeah. So the original variety that was spread out the region was the Típica. They used to call it Criollo. The Típica is the main variety around town. Due to fungus or other plagues or other situations in the past, Panama started receiving a lot of Catuai and Caturra seeds. And Catuai and Caturra were productive, high quality, and very convenient for the Panamanian farms. So many farms had Criollo and Caturra or Catuai or both. This is the main three varieties in the land. Many farmers had other varieties from the past that they stayed with them, because most of the varieties that somebody ended up getting in their farm, they will remove it. They will remove it for reasons of productivity, knowing the plant. Maybe the plant wasn't strong enough for that specific plot of land, or other reasons. So they were concentrating mostly on those three that I just mentioned. So yeah, some people were doing Catimor, and then they realized when they started copying, this doesn't work. So let's move away from Catimor. Let's go back to the traditional Caturra or Catuai. Caturra and Catuai was the same bed. Everybody knew it. Everybody was working well with it. If I do the flashback for the geisha, we talk about 1936. They get the geisha out of Ethiopia. They get it to the Ministry of Agriculture. They plant some of the seeds in different parts of the world. One of the seeds gets planted in a farm in Tanzania, in the Kilimanjaro skirts, a farm controlled by the FAO. It's an experimental farm. They have the accession VC496. VC496 is a section that is the mother of the today known as Panama Geisha, according to the World Coffee Research. That plant, then, with studies for a few decades, they realized it's resistant to roya, a fungus that attacks coffee plants. Costa Rica has a big roya breakdown in 1954. So the FAO sends CATIE, the largest bank of seeds in the world, which is located in Costa Rica. They send them seeds so that they can combat the roya by producing this plant. So when Costa Rica received this, CATIE renames the plant 2702, or what was the original name? It's okay. So that specific one, that one it's important because some people use it, that specific number. So the Costa Ricans get it. Then the Costa Ricans, in 9 years later, Panama is facing the same situation. So the Ministry of Agriculture in Panama asked Costa Rica for help. Costa Rica gives some seeds to a former official from the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Francisco Serracin Tonpachi, and he brings seeds to Panama. Several farms had it. We're talking about the 60s and 70s. Several farms had geisha, but farms moved away from the geisha. They moved away from the geisha because it's low production, if you compare to the Caturra or Catuai. So I'm gonna jump.
And the same thing happened in Costa Rica.
Yeah. The same happened to all Central America. Even in Brazil, they have. So I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna jump back to 1997. 1997, already Best of Panama is happening. SCAP is going on. First competition, then second competition, 1998. The Peterson family gets a call from a bank official saying, we have a farm that just is about to get repossessed. We need that if you are interested in the farm before it goes into the bidding process. Let's say probably Mr. Price Peterson was one of the few people in a position to buy a farm back then. So Mr. Price goes, sees the farm with his kids. His daughter falls in love with the farm. Beautiful farm in the area of Jaramillo, Boquete. Nice views. And then Mr. Price ends up buying the farm. His kid, Daniel, recently finished college and got he had some courses of copying courses in San Francisco. So he was knowledge about coffee at the moment. He goes with his father to this coffee farm. They see all the plantation full of several varieties, different varieties. And they say, wow, what should we do with this? There's so many varieties of coffee. Back then, everybody would have took down everything and concentrate on what's working. because the Petersons were not in a rush, probably because the economical position they had made them be able to be patient, think, study, and realize what was the best. Probably that was the biggest game changer ever for coffee, not in Panama, in the world, because geisha coffee impacted the rest of the world, and I'm going there in a few minutes. So Daniel, what he did was, you know what? Let's wait. Rain's coming. It's in the year 1999. La Nina effect. Heavy rains in Panama destroys most of the coffee varieties. Leaves were brown. Leaves were fallen. Three style of coffees survived. Caturra, Catuay. Everybody knew about them already in the region. And this one. What is this? They called an agronomist, friend of them, Mr. Pachi Serracin, knew about the variety before. He was the one that brought it in the 60s. We're talking about 1999, so it was already 4 years before that. And Mr. Pachi Serracin said that that variety is special. The variety is not very highly productive, but it resists rain. My opinion, the rainiest parts of the farm, plant that. So they did. They planted that in the rainiest part of the farm, aka the highest part of the farm. Few years later, 2004, Best of Panama. Okay, so we're in 1999. Geisha is already planted. Nothing is happening with the geisha yet. 2001. In the year 2001, Panama sees that Best of Brazil happened. Best of Brazil uses a software for auctions. And they say, wow, this is interesting. Let's do an auction. Let's do an auction like Brazil is doing. So they contacted the SCAA people, and there's a guy named Malcolm. Hey, Malcolm Stone. Hey, Malcolm, we want to do an auction like Brazil did. Okay, let's do it. So Panama does the first auction. First auction, Panama sells the coffee, better prices than the sea market. Sea market in that year were around the 60 cents. They sold coffees for over $1, most of them. But the highest price was $4.80 per pound. Big deal. Everybody's happy. Next year, 2002, we win the first place. There's no categories back then. No differences in varieties. No differences in process. Nobody's doing any other process than wash coffee. So $2.37 we did in the first place. Happy. Everybody's happy. Third year of the auction, another coffee sells for $3.06. The rest of the coffees were better than the average price of the sea market. Looks like the auction, it's a success. The year 2004, previous to the Best of Panama competition, Daniel Peterson is copying the coffees from his farm. Because he knew this plant was different, he decided to plant it alone on this side of the farm. He collects it, he tasted it, and immediately he knew something was completely different. He was not sure if it was different good or different bad. He just knew it was different. So Daniel goes and asks people, what should we do with this? There's a guy named Rick Reinhardt. Rick Reinhardt is a former SCA CEO, and he used to be an instructor for cupping, and he was doing a cupping course in Boquete. And then Daniel says, hey, Rick, I want you to try this coffee. Rick tries the coffee, and he's like, this tastes like an Ethiopian, but on steroids. Like, where did you get this coffee from? It's like in my farm. It's like, wow, compete with this. It's like, do you think the judges are going to accept it? It's like, last year you did pretty bad in the competition. There's nothing to lose. Go for it. Daniel goes with that coffee. Peterson family introduced that coffee. 2004. Nobody is talking about coffee varieties. Nobody. There's nobody talking about coffee varieties only for agricultural purposes. Only agronomists talked about coffee varieties. Nobody in the market, no buyer, no seller, no roaster talks about varieties of coffee in that moment. There is Arabica and there is Robusta. That's it. People knew about varieties just for agricultural purposes, not for quality or purposes. They go with the coffee called Jaramillo Especial, which is the region of the farm. They compete with that coffee. The rumor was already spread. Producers already cut the coffees, already knew that the coffees there was a special coffee that was gonna blow everybody's mind. People was a little bit skeptical of the possibility of just thinking this is way too different. Maybe this is not gonna work. But everybody knew that something great was happening. A game changer was about to happen. Let's say my father already knew that year there was a coffee that was gonna blow everybody's mind. Rick Ryan already talked about it, and he was also a judge, so he was already known about it. No surprises. They win first place. Everybody blew, mind blown. Nick, when you were in the Best of Panama, Will Young said this is the first time a judge gives 100 to a coffee. Talking about a coffee that got 100.
A few coffees,
yeah. Not true. 2004, the year 2004, one of the judges gave the coffee 100 points, and their score got eliminated because it was extremely high. Because that coffee got 100 points, and that
was too competitive.
That score got eliminated. So that coffee wins. Everybody already knew it was the only different one. Big different. Peterson family. Auction happens. The auctions, everybody is expecting the auction happens. Okay, so for those who are listening, Best of Panama competition happens. 2 months after, the Best of Panama auction happens. So every year the competition happens. 2 months after, the auction happens. Because they send samples, they do promotion, they get together, everything is organized in 2 months. 2 months is the time of competition results to the auction. So in the 2 months, everybody's getting, everybody's expecting, nobody knows what to do. Somebody comes and offers the Petersons, we're going to buy all your coffee for $2 a pound. And the Petersons were tempted, and they say, no, let's wait for the auction. So crazy stuff happening in between. Everybody was nervous, even though the coffee was not owned by a producer. Everybody was expecting what is going to happen. The auction happens, and the auction gets blocked. Why is blocked? Everybody start calling the guy Malcolm. Malcolm's busy. Malcolm's not picking up. Then Malcolm finally picks up. Oh, hey guys, sorry. Be patient. I'm trying to fix. Apparently there's a hacker. I've been calling the buyers to let them know to be patient, because I think there's a hacker that I'm trying to fix. So I will call you back. Go. Calling everybody. Hey, I'm sorry. I know you're bidding. Please be patient. One of the guys picks up and says, what the hacker did? Well, the hacker bid $10 for the coffee. So we're trying to fix this. And then the guy's like, no. I bid $10 for the coffee. I want to buy that coffee. Really? Why? Because that coffee is really good. Okay. Remember, back then, 5 cents was the normal increment. 10 cents if the coffee was really good. Somebody immediately bids $10. That's mind-blowing. That guy didn't even ended up winning the lot. So that lot was sold for $21 a pound. And that was the biggest mind-blown ever. Today, we have sold coffees for over $2,000 a pound in the Best of Panama. But that one is still the most shocking moment in specialty coffee history, not for Panama, for the world, because that's the moment where everything opens. Nobody was thinking about varieties of coffee until that specific moment. Because what happens in that specific moment, every producer in Panama said, let's go to our farms because there is still some geisha out there. And then everybody started dividing the varieties. And they say, okay, if we are going to divide the variety for geisha, let's also divide the other varieties. We might have some Typica here. We might have some Catuaya here. Some other people have some Bourbon around. So people started, dividing by variety. So people started thinking about variety. And buyers then started thinking about variety. It's a variety called geisha now, and let's think about variety. So everybody started thinking about variety, not for agricultural purposes, but for selling point purposes, quality purposes. And then the years started happening, and the auction grew and grew and grew. We had no geisha. We were the ones that had no geisha in the farm. Some producers did. They had a few trees. They reproduced those trees. Some producers had enough trees, so they were able to compete with geisha in a few years after that, and so on. We had none. So we started planting specifically that year. But that takes a lot of time. In high altitude, it can take up to 8 years to have a full production. So we had to wait until 2014 was the first year we competed with geisha coffee in the Best of Panama. And because geisha coffee was winning, obviously, in a big manner.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, but so like my thing about the geisha is like, what is it about Panamanian geisha and like a purely quality profile that makes it stand out compared to other geishas like from Colombia? I mean, Costa Rica had the geisha first, and to be honest, I never think of Costa Rica having a geisha from Costa Rica. Like, is it just a brand now, or is there something special about growing geisha in Panama? Does that make sense?
There is a group of factors. Okay, so Panama has, the geisha from Panama right now, it's still number one. This type of subjects creates a lot of, we as Panamanian producers, we've been called elitist. When we go to the expos, and we've been called elitist producers. Our coffees have been called unaccessible coffees. Highly influential people like James Hoffman, who has probably the most followers in the coffee, especially coffee industry, trashed geisha a few times, not only one time. He trashed geisha. Like big names in coffee have trashed geisha and trashed Panama as elitism and so on, so on. So and still Panama is number one. And I don't want to be called wrong or called arrogant or called anything, but it's the truth. It's the truth. The same judges that you saw in the Best of Panama are the same people that travel to Costa Rica, to Guatemala, to Honduras, and go for the Cup of Excellence, tasting the Cup of Excellence. Our head judge used to be a board member in the Cup of Excellence for many, many years. Will Young used to be a board member in Cup of Excellence. And Will Young said it himself many times with a microphone on, Panama is the best of Panama is the best coffee in the world. So I just don't want to say that I'm saying it because I am from here, but it's because lately it's been like that. That doesn't mean that Panama is going to be the best forever. I know that there are regions in the world that has potential to overcome Panama. Probably not. Whatever. There is a potential. There is. The reason why Panama is special right now, we believe, is a combination of factors. One of the factors is the combination of land, terroir, and variety in the specific region where we are. If you picture a map of Panama or you Google a map of America, of the entire continent right now, you're going to be able to see that from North America to South America, everything is going north to south until you go to Panama, and Panama lays down completely. And by laying down, you have oceans in a completely different position than the rest of the Americas. Costa Rica may have the same situation too, but the difference between Costa Rica and us is that our oceans are so much more narrow between ocean to ocean than it is in the rest of the world. That's why we have a canal, because it was the narrowest spot that you could open without having to do too much digging. So because Panama is so narrow between ocean to ocean, it has the combination of the winds. The combination of the winds that come from one side to the other side and clutch specifically in that mountain range. And the mountain range is almost in the half between the distance of the two oceans. That creates a complete, unique microclimate. And of course, we have the volcanic soils that also Guatemala, Costa Rica, and all the Central American countries have the volcanic soils. Yes, but over our volcanic soils, with the specific minerals we do, there is a combination and a clash of winds that come from both oceans that are completely different weathers, because one is getting impacted by humid, warm weather from the Pacific, while the other one is coming cold from the United States, from Florida specifically, the south of the United States, when it clashes this region. So that's why you are in Boquete, the town of Boquete, downtown Boquete, and you say, we're gonna drive 10 minutes to that side, and you drive 10 minutes to that side. And when you arrive at the 10 minutes, let's call each other and see what's the weather. And you're gonna have a completely different weather than we do. 10 minutes, you just decide two sides. Oh, high, you go to the same altitudes, high up. 10 minutes, different sides of the mountain, it's completely different weather.
Enjoying this episode of the Coffee and Technology Podcast? This podcast would not be possible without the support of Cropster. Whether it's tracking harvest yield, roastery and inventory management, or simply tracking brew recipes, Cropster Origin, Cropster Roast, and Cropster Cafe can help you streamline your workflows and help you operate more efficiently.
Right. This is really fascinating, Wilford, and I think like the climate conditions and soil conditions can be very different in different regions of the world. Now, I would like to learn something from the really challenging position Panama was in and kind of is in. There's not many countries which are so high priced for production, for agricultural production, and still it was possible to create a specialty product which can thrive in that environment. And I think it can be extremely interesting for so many other countries to think about exactly that. It's like, how can we create a specialty product and get higher prices and pay our pickers and pay everybody? Because it's really hard to transfer wind and soil and do all the same thing, right?
No,
That's just
I agree with you.
That's Panama. That nobody can take that away. But I think the learning and like the dynamic which was created when they say, well, there was a big crisis. That was intense.
Yeah.
Right. All the other countries were producing, and Panama couldn't compete.
Yeah.
And suddenly came back, and I think that's a huge learning.
That was the other factor I was going to mention. So by saying what you just said, I want to rephrase what he told me. I don't know if he wants me to tell this, but he told me, Felipe Sardi, well-known coffee producer from Colombia. He has 2 projects in Panama already, one beautiful farm that is ready to start producing in the next season. He was driving around in my farm with me, and then he crapped a bunch of dirt, and he said to me, I cannot replicate this in Colombia. That's why I decided to invest this in Panama. But there's another factor. There's another important factor that Colombia can replicate from Panama, and other countries can replicate from Panama. One thing is that our production was so low and so uninteresting for governments. Let's remind the listeners that are not from Latin America or Africa. Latin American and African governments are corrupt and they don't care about their people. This is important for everybody to understand. That's why so many countries are in such a bad position, including ours. But because we were so small, the coffee production, the government didn't care about us at all. So the association was able to work without any political influence. No, that doesn't happen in Honduras, that doesn't happen in Costa Rica, that doesn't happen in Colombia. Politics are involved, and everything makes it so much harder for them to be able to evolve because they have politicians involved. Politicians getting in the mind of people, manipulating, and this creates so much more challenges and obstacles for producers to evolve. If you ask a specialty coffee producer from Colombia, because right now the collective of coffee farms that are doing amazing in the world, that are outside of Panama, are Colombians. We can mention a few names, like Inmaculada, La Esperanza, La Palma del Tucán, La Negrita, all these coffee farms, and there are more. I don't think there are, I'm not, it's not on purpose that I'm leaving out others. It's a long list. It's a long list, actually. The Colombian producers, all of them that I'm mentioning, have done things around the rules in able to put those special coffees they get in your tables. For example, famous variety that is coming out of Colombia right now, Eugenioides. That's not on the rules. Eugenioides cannot be exported out of Colombia. In Colombia, you can only export Castillo washed coffee, period. Nothing else. And they are doing it around the rules. Those naturals that you get out of Colombia, those geishas that you get out of Colombia, they are not necessarily the federation rules. So one of the reasons we were able to evolve faster is because we were able to do stuff outside of the norm. And the second one, and the most important one, and the one that is easier to replicate everywhere in the world, connectivity. Every single producer in Panama sat down and said, we are in a tough position. We need to rise together. And then they started rising together. My father, grandfather, and all these producers were friends from school. One thing that happened, we are in Boquete. So going to Boquete, the schools in Boquete were not probably the best. So the better school was in the town of David, which is the capital city of the province. If somebody has visited the province, the airport is in David. So David had the better school. So people from Volcan or Boquete will get on a bus and travel to the school. Being in the bus meant you're going to spend an hour and a half on the way to the school and on the way back home every single day with other kids, and kids different ages. So you will be able to have a relationship with them. And all these coffee producers come from that. So that's how the friendship got so strong. The bond, the specific bond they have, comes from the producers getting together every day. So everybody was friends. Everybody was a son of friends in the past. And in the times of my great-grandfather, the only way they produced coffee was all the neighbors got together and say, week 1 belongs to the Lamastus. Week 2 belongs to the Monique. Week 3 belongs to the other one. And they will go to the farm, do all the processing, maybe one employee they had and themselves, picking, drying, peeling, and then the owner of that farm will provide food. The next week they will go to the next farm and the next farm until they were able to get all the coffee processed and take that in the horses to the place where they were going to be able to distribute the coffee. So this community thing happened early on, 100 years ago. So that's why today there's this collectivity. And Nick was there. Nick saw producers. Remember, I am competing against the Esmeralda. I need my coffee to beat their coffee in the competition. I need my clients to buy more of my coffee than they do theirs. We have the same clients, the same competition. We're with the same product. We're trying to compete against them. But at the end of the day, we're sitting together in the tables, and Nick was able to witness this. We're sitting against in the same tables. We're laughing out. We're friends. We're very close. And that collectivity is the one that changed everything. And I think that's the one that everybody else can replicate.
And I think based on that too, one thing that I noticed too is that like so unique about Panama is that, like you said, everybody competes against each other. Everybody's trying to have the best coffee, the best variety, the best process, whatever. But I feel like everybody knows that if everybody gets better, everybody's coffee will be better. Everybody's coffee is going to get sold at the end of the day. Their production is going to be at the highest level. And on top of that, what I notice is like, probably not just the best of Panama, but everybody cups everybody's coffees. Everybody knows each other's coffees because they know they can learn from each other. And they're always talking about each other's coffees and always talking about what did you do differently? What can I do differently? And yeah, at the end of the day, there might be one winner, but at the end of that all, like all the producers know that if they produce the best coffee, their coffee is going to get sold no matter what. Like they're gonna sell their coffees at the best price, and they have that kind of like security and confidence in that. I found that fascinating. I've never seen that before.
It is like that. There's a documentary called Higher Grounds. Higher Grounds is a documentary made about Panamanian specialty coffee. I highly recommend it to the listeners. It's a 1-hour documentary. It's in English. There are a few interviews in Spanish, but they have subtitles. But the majority of the documentary is in English. It's a pretty cool documentary and that talks about the story that I'm telling you. But the collectivity thing, yeah, of course. Now we've grown. We've grown. It was, of course, way closer back in the day when my parents were younger, when I was a kid, when they were trying to came out, to start being well known. There's a guy named Barry Levine. He's a Willow Beast Coffee in Connecticut. He's one of the judges in the Best of Panama. One time, my father, Peterson, the young Petersons, because one thing that the Petersons have is that they are like in between generations. Daniel Peterson is between my father and myself because he's younger than 15 years younger than my father, 15 years older than me. So the young Petersons, my father, coiners, they go in a bus or a train, I don't know, in Connecticut after one of the SCAX bus. They go visit this guy. They beg for help. They used to beg for people to try the samples. It was very welcoming. And today we're in a completely different position. Every buyer comes here and takes the coffee. Because of COVID, we missed that for 2 years. This year's probably 80% back. Because we don't have the Chinese and the Asians have a lot more travel to this side of the world because they have trouble coming back. But we're getting back to that scenario. People come here, taste the coffee, and make the order here. It changed completely. we're so much more bigger than we were before, but we are still very close friends, and we still share some knowledge. We don't have to do it the way we did before. This gentleman, Carlos Aguilera, coffee producer, he's the founder of Carmen State. He now has a company called Franceschi Coffees. Carlos Aguilera calls my father and his colleagues and said, I planted this amount of geisha trees and the wind ruined them. Be aware and then don't do the same. He lost a lot of money, and he's not gaining any money by telling the rest. He just don't want his colleagues to lose the money and the time. So immediately he calls them and tells them what happened. So things like this changed. One thing that happened in Panama also is that when natural coffees were introduced to Panama, producers in Panama were able to test with the natural coffees immediately. They didn't have to wait for permits and stuff. So as soon as the natural coffees were resulted in a positive thing, they were able to introduce it as a category in the best of Panama, and from there starts. From there, it started, being a big thing. The natural coffees were sold higher. The natural coffee doesn't mean that the coffees are better, but it was a new thing, And then the buyers were excited for this new thing, innovative. So Panama was the terroir, the new variety, new process, the new everything in the terms of auction thing. So that's the things that happen in Panama. Is the way to innovate is collectivity, and also something that is harder in other countries, the reason that we don't have governments on top of us nagging. Now the government wants to nag, but we are already an institution, so we are able to blind our. Yeah, we're able to protect ourselves now.
Right. I wanted to talk about two more things, and that's technology. So what role does technology play in that whole journey? And then I also wanted to touch the marketing topic a little bit, because I know there's fascinating stories behind that, and there's a little bit more insights. Maybe I don't know, what do you want to jump in first?
Technology. We can talk about technology. So technology. One big deal about technology is that we were working, like everybody else. We were working with decent roasters. We were working with the cupping forms, the SCAA cupping forms. But then we started evolving. We already were working with the online auction. 2001 online auction. That's a pretty innovative thing, and it's not started by us. It started by Brazil. But of course, an online auction is so much more connected than somebody present to be in an auction. So one thing that we started doing is we started evolving in the roasting part. We changed roasters to a more technological roasters, where we started working around the roasting curve for the different coffees, because remember, these coffees are coded. You don't know what coffee it is. You may know the variety and the process. That's it. You don't know where it is coming from, anything else. You measure density, you measure that, you know the variety, and you know the process. You don't even know the process specifically. You know if it's pulp or depulp. That's it. So you have to work around that. And then thanks to technologies like Cropster, we were able to have a better understanding of the curves and replicate them in a better position, and start from a point that we already knew it worked for specific coffees. And it was able for us to spend less coffee, because one thing that happens is that it goes into an action, and if the coffee is not good, we lose it. And that's valuable coffee, because if somebody puts a lot in the best of Panama, it's because that producer is putting their valuable lot, and the coffee gets lost when it's not roasted well. And it's not nobody's fault, it's just different coffees. Thanks to these technologies, we were able to be a lot more efficient. And then the other technological part we started involving in Best of Panama is the technology of using Cropster Cup. Being able to do the Cropster Cup as judges and doing everything in Cropster and not doing by hand, it helped not only be more efficient, more elegant, because it is more elegant to see people working on a tablet or a phone instead of working with paper, more ecological, and also helps a lot in immediate analysis. Immediate analysis, that's the biggest deal I think that helps with Cropster. And then you have everything, the data, everything is there, everything is safe, everything's in the cloud. Those technological factors we were able to implement immediately. Of course, when we changed the roaster, we needed the money. The roasters are not cheap. But when we had to do the Cropster roaster and the Cropster cup, it's easy because it's not too much money. It's simple money, you know. When my father was the president of the Specialty Coffee Association of Panama, a lot of changes happened. One of these big changes that happened was the Cropster Cup. He applied the Cropster Cup under his presidency, which I think is pretty big deal. But also when my father was the president, he's been a president twice. This is the second time he's been a president. It was the biggest change of the Best of Panama. The Best of Panama changed from a pretty basic spot that has a lot of space to a place called Valle Escondido. And I have Nick here that he can tell you about Valle Escondido. Valle Escondido is a beautiful place. The first year Valle Escondido was, Best of Panama was moved to Valle Escondido, Ricardo Coiner was the president. It was a pretty nice place, the river, the trees, the hotel, the food, everything makes it so much better, and everything is so integrated. You don't have to move people to the hotel, then going back to the restaurant, then go back. Everything happens in that specific place. That helped with the branding and with the psychological part of the judges when they come to this beautiful spot. Of course, Nick saw it now. In the past, we used to use smaller rooms that we don't use anymore. Now we are using a more spacious place with a lot of more activities going on in that same spot. When my father became the president of the Specialty Coffee Association in the year 2018, we saw that, and we realized there was a lot of changes that needed to be done. For example, SCAP owned antique dipping grinders. Antique. They were antique. They were old. They didn't even look good. They were rusty. Of course, they were calibrated. They were fixed every year for Best of Panama. But on the outside, it was not good. So when my father was the president, I said, you know what? Let's get Malconic. He's like, oh, let's get Malconic. So we started doing a deal with Malconic where Malconic comes, and Malconic puts the grinders, and then the grinders are sold for a better price. And once they are sold, we get new ones the next year. So we are getting new Malconics every year for the Best of Panama. And there's a market for those grinders. And for a better price, of course, people will buy it. And every year we get better Malconics. The water used to be a big, big, big oven from tap water. Now the water, we started doing the kettles, Brewista kettles, made for cupping, with everything better for the quality. The water quality, we started working with Aquacode. I started using all of my contacts, quote unquote, from Brewers Cup competitions to apply into the Best of Panama. So Aquacode is one of those, Brewista is one of those, Malconic is one of those. So we started applying all these things. When you come to a competition and you're a coffee person and you see a bunch of Malconics next to each other, a bunch of Brewista kettles next to each other, your mind starts connecting with, big deal. Then you see Cropster when they say, okay, you're gonna start copying, this is your Cropster login. And they see Cropster, they start connecting all these brands that are synonym of excellence in coffee. Or automatically, you are already set up to taste better coffees. Even though the coffee is already good, that helps also have a better psychological feeling of the coffee. Best of Panama didn't have a brand. Specialty Coffee Association of Panama had a logo, but Best of Panama did have no logo. So during my father's presidency, we pushed into the logo. And the logo was a big, big argument. Different producers, some of the board members wanted nothing to do with the logo. They wanted no logo. There was something. And that created tension. It created big tension. Tensions that I think, that I'm talking about 2018. We're talking about 4 years ago. Tensions that are still, being fixed. But all these changes were needed because we need the branding part, the visual part. Best of Panama is visual now. Best of Panama is Instagrammable now. It didn't used to be that way. I have to say something. It's not to brag, but it's a reality. We took advantage of my father being the president. He hired my wife to be the event coordinator for the thing. One thing, she's talented, and I'm I'm not trying to put it out up there because it's my wife. She's talented. That's why she's full of work. But a big advantage of the reason that she was the event coordinator for Best of Panama is that as not an independent coordinator, we can have better communication directly with coffee, and she understands coffee better. So it's gonna make the event be better. That was never a complaint. Her work was never a complaint. The logo was. The book was. There's a book. We have a book now. We have a beautiful book called Panama Coffee. It's not even made by us, but it was interiorly sponsored by us. We didn't even put the money. The money was given to us, but we have to be the signers or whatever. That was a big controversy. Books there. Books beautiful. Documentary wasn't that big of a controversy, but it had some resistance at the beginning. Documentaries there. I recommend you to see it. Higher Grounds. Beautiful documentary. Panama Geisha. Panama Geisha branding began in December 2017. The idea of creating a brand. Probably that was the biggest fights in the Specialty Coffee Association board member. Big fights. People were resistant to the change. And I understand, you've been doing things at the point you are super successful now. There's no reason, there's no desperate, nobody's desperate to do changes. So why change? And probably my younger mindset and some other members of the association, we thought, you know what, we need changes. At the beginning, my father was, let's not do that. And then I sat with him and I said, Dad, I think we need to do this. And I explained to him why. And he's like, it's up to you. I believe in you. Now, he reads about branding. He reads about marketing. He reads about all this all the time. He got obsessed with this subject. The same happened to our farm. Our farm had no logo. He had a painting of my father's cousin did several years before. He had a name called Elida Estate, but no real logo. And he was, a coffee farm that produces great coffee, and that's it. With my wife, we started creating the Lamastus Family Estates logo. The Lamastus Family Estates was a name that already existed for registration purposes in the Best of Panama. We created it as a brand. We started branding our whole concept, our whole farm, our whole Lamastus Family Estate. And all parallel, these two things happen. And I think they are very important because at the end of the day, there are thousands of coffees that are amazing in the world, but there's ways you can stand out and there's ways you can attract market. Now you see so many farmers around the world creating the brands, creating the marketing. Is so important. It's so important. The other day, let me finish this point. Please. This story, small story. There's this guy called Ibrahim. Ibrahim is an espresso lab. He's very, he's a very interesting person. So Ibrahim has beautiful coffee shops in the UAE. So Ibrahim is super active in Instagram. Ibrahim tells a producer, hey, your coffee is so great. I just cupped it. I think you have to do more on the social media. And the producer tells him, do you think I'm going to sell more coffee if I use it with Instagram? But in a very doubtful way. Of course, you are going to do it. And okay, continue. I just think that it's very important to start using the tools we have already in these times.
Yeah, I wanted to reconnect to a conversation we had earlier about the impact of using the producer's name in a US competition, specifically in the Good Food Awards. So maybe you can bring that story back, because I think it's extremely interesting from that perspective, like how producer branding reflects not only in the selling countries or in the consuming countries, but really also back into origin countries.
Well, we had the best of the Good Food Awards in 2013. Verve wins the 2013 Good Food Awards using our coffee, and they use our names, the Elida Estate, Lamastus Family Estate. They didn't call it Lamastus Family Estate. And the guys from Verve gave my father the medal, so we have it in the farm. So that was a pretty big deal back then. I think it's very important that you are attached to the name of the farm and the farmers, because at the end of the day, roasters have established brand. And the roaster, it's what people is trusting because of the roast brand, also because of proximity to whatever their neighborhoods are, and the ambience and everything else. And the roaster has already a name and a reputation. But the variety of the roaster is the brand name of the product, where it comes from. Sometimes I see that there are still roasters around the world that only uses the region and avoids the name of the producer. I don't know why. But I think it's very important to use the name of the producer, because that gets more engagement. When a person comes into a coffee shop and tastes the coffee for the first time and says, "This is better, this is different, this is special," why? And then it gets an engagement with the coffee person, either the barista or the roaster. They are immediately going to be more open to whatever you're going to make them taste. If you're only using the name Panama, they're going to say another Panama. Okay, fine. But if you're using different producers and you're using not only the name of the farm, but the name of the producer, these people are going to get engaged. And they're going to remember the name. They are seeing a name tag already in this package. That's going to get a lot more engagement with the customers. Let's remember something important. We are a very new industry, super new industry. People started to get to know our industry. You know what is the number one reason people come to this coffee shop? The aesthetics. It's not our name. It's not the coffee. It's the aesthetics. It's not the food, because I work with an amazing chef. It's the best chef in Panama. It's not the food. It's not the coffee. It's the aesthetics and the proximity, because it's in a place where people walk around a lot. So that's number one. And that's still happening in the rest of the world. Some countries are a little bit less than others, but people still go into the coffee shops because the place looks cool, or is located in a cool place, or it's a convenient place, and then they go into the rest. Why do you think cappuccinos is still the number one beverage in every coffee shop, especially in the Western Hemisphere? Because people are still not learning about coffee. Yeah, people are still not learning about coffee. People are just going for the coffee. So we're still super new in this. So every time you use that names, is engagement. And even so, one time I was in an event called Farm Level Summit, created by Verve Coffee in California. They didn't repeat it because of COVID, but they're repeating it again this year. On the Farm Level Summit, it was pretty interesting. It was like a group of producers from Colombia, Central America, and we spoke like for 8 hours straight. Then we had some marketing people, we had some roasting people talk to us, and then we have a Q&A with baristas and roasters from the region, from LA. And they asked, very concerned, how can we help? How can we help? And I told them, you know what? Every time a customer asks you a question about a coffee, just by replying a full answer politely, you are helping the producers directly and immediately, because you are creating the knowledge on that person about that specific coffee. That's the best way to help right now. I think this happened to me in London, New York, and other cities like this. You go to a specialty coffee and people tend to be rude all the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. Too many people in amazing coffee shops that have amazing reputation, they tend to be rude. And then coffee is served in paper cups. You will never serve one of the best chateaus from France in a paper cup. Why will you serve a pour over? I'm in Colombia, in New York. I ordered a pour over Tabi. I've never tried Tabi before. I heard about Tabi as an amazing coffee, and I see the Tabi coffee there, and I'm like, that's a special one. It doesn't even have a price in the menu, and I don't care. I say, you know what? I'm gonna have the Tabi. I ordered the Tabi. It was about $9 or something, and I ordered the Tabi, and the guy's making the first thing is that, oh, you want to pour over? That's gonna take about 15 minutes. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'll wait for it. It doesn't matter. There was no seating space. I was gonna wait standing up. Then the guy starts making the pour over, and then when he's about to serve the pour over, I already paid for it. I already knew it was $9. When he was about to serve the pour over in a paper cup, I'm like, wait. You don't have any ceramic or a different material? And then he grabs the latte, big latte cup, and he serves it there. He's kind of annoyed about it. And then I tell him, I'm buying a $9 coffee. He said, you have it in the menu as the most special coffee you have today in the menu. Why are you serving me that in the paper cup? That tastes so much better in ceramic. And then I had a ceramic. It was an amazing coffee, but just that idea, we have to treat everybody in the scene. We need to treat this product as special. You go to a place that sells you wine, and they're gonna make you swirl and smell shitty wine. And they're gonna serve you in the proper cup, shitty wine, not special wine. Every restaurant that sells decent wine, if you order the lowest quality wine in the menu, they're gonna make you smell it. They're gonna swirl the thing. They're gonna do the whole showing you the bottle thing. So why not the same with coffee? Why don't treat the coffee the same way? Everybody in the specialty coffee shops, especially the specialty coffee shops that are roasters, we have to treat it better. We have to serve it in the proper container and make it the best way possible. Not everybody's gonna have the same preferences, but the treatment should be the nicest possible one. So I think all these things are attached, And the Good Food Awards, that name thing helped. Now, the winner is the roaster. Let's remember that. Big important thing, the winner is the roaster. But the roaster using the name of the producer is a pretty cool thing. And the Good Food Awards stopped using coffees from Panama for a while because they started doing a lot of certifications that nobody in Panama has. And then they removed those certifications, and now we are back in the game, and some Panamanian coffees are still awarded in the Good Food Awards. The latest one we had was with Onyx in 2020, the year of the pandemic, 2021.
Wow. so much good information, man. That was an incredible story. I'm honestly mind blown in my own way. Thank you.
Think about that when you go to a coffee shop and they are gonna serve you in a paper cup.
I think it's very true, and I think the difference is probably a little bit price point, but a lot of culture for sure. And I mean, pandemic has not helped at all. I noticed coffee shops which would always serve you in really beautiful, cups. Didn't have to go to disposable, but it's really not the same experience. And I usually, like, if it's paper cup, sure, I take my espresso, but I treat it like, okay, I have my caffeine fix now. If I have it in a decent cup or something, even like presented maybe with a little bit of water and stuff, it's a different experience. And of course the tasting experience is also very different.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's a time where hopefully even cheap glassware is available for those coffees. Makes all the difference.
Yeah. You are wearing the 7 Seeds t-shirt. 7 Seeds is yeah. So I met a guy in the past weekend, and he said to me, we were talking about coffee, and then I told him about Melbourne for the Brewers Cup. The guy's like, oh, you're going to Melbourne. He said, I had a master's degree in Melbourne 12 years ago. And when I went to a coffee shop, and the coffee shop had a coffee from Panama, and he's Panamanian. So he said, I was pretty excited. I was 12 years ago. He said, isn't it your coffee? And he said, he remembers that it was the most expensive coffee in the menu. And then I asked him, what's the name of the coffee shop? And he didn't remember. But then he started looking around in Google on his neighborhood area. And then he said, I think it's this one, 7 Seeds. I'm like, oh yeah, I think it's that one. I know 7 Seeds pretty well. I've never been in Australia, but I know Mike, and I know 7 Seeds, the brand. We sold coffee to them several years ago. Yeah, so that reminded me of that. The connection of seeing one thing that is super valuable for us. Like we've accomplished so much in coffee. Probably we are amongst the most accomplished coffee companies in the world. Because if you want to measure it by money, probably Nestlé is the most accomplished in the world. But if you want to see it by mentioning and product placement in the best spots in the world and recognition for points and awards, we're probably one of the companies that have accomplished the most in the world, Lamastus family estates. but we still get so much excitement when we see Panama in cities like Melbourne, Tokyo, London, New York. You see the name Panama in cities like this because we don't produce in this country. We don't produce anything. We produce so little, and our country is mostly in news because either the Panama Canal or money laundering. So when we are in the news for stuff like good stuff, and we know that we help, and it's not even us, it's our colleagues as well. Because sometimes I go to a coffee shop. The other day I went to Milan. I wasn't expecting it. I was staying in a hotel. A block away from my hotel, there's a place called Cafesal, very nice coffee shop. I
Yes.
walk in the coffee shop, I see the coffee, and there's a coffee from Panama. And it's not my coffee, it's another producer from Panama. It's Gilberto Cardosa is the name of the producer. And I saw it and immediately got excited. I purchased a bag, I took a picture of it, I sent it to everybody. So it's a pretty fun experience. It's pretty exciting. We still get a lot of around it. We still get excited about it. We got mentioned in the show Billions, our coffee, with the name of the farm. But we still get excited for these little things. It's normal that we are mentioning we're being sold in a specialty coffee shop around the world, but we still get excited about it. We still get excited when people that is not in coffee industry travel and sends us a picture of a Panamanian coffee around anywhere they travel. That still is very exciting, and being able to do a good name for our country is a pretty big deal for us.
I think what you reflect so well is your pride and your knowledge of your product, and putting that out there, being not afraid of talking about it, not being afraid of celebrating a win and putting it out there. And I think that's also part of that learning especially for producers. It's like, don't be shy, don't hold back. Maybe you're not used to that. You're not used to mention yourself or say, hey, this is like the best coffee, or I won an award, or hey, this was displayed at a roaster who participated in a competition and won or got second or third or something, right? So it's just doing that. It's part of like the marketing, but it's also part of the creating that brand. And I think so that's why it's not you're not by mistake ending up in those shows or ending up in those places, because you've learned to deal with that, and you put yourself out there, right? And it's people can criticize that always, and I think that's one of the first thoughts people might have, like, well, he talks about all those things, and it's like, but it's important to talk about it, because if nobody talks about it, nobody knows. So
Yeah,
I guess
and to that point, I have producers, colleague producers that have accomplished a lot as well, telling me, no, you have to be a little more quiet with those things. There's a mystique about it. There's no mystique. We need to talk about stuff, because our accomplishments are also other people's accomplishments or other people's inspirations. I get so much engagement with producers around the world, producers that are in a, most of these producers have a lot of challenges economically, and they see these things and they get excited about it, and they text us via DM, and then we exchange phone numbers or emails, and I help them with whatever I can with information. And if someday they get to travel to one of these expos, or I get to travel to their countries, we get together. This comes out of the competition thing. The latest one we did was one in Cusco, producer in Cusco, and I've been following all their growth, and I've been helping them with processes from afar. A Colombian guy also lost his parents in a pretty tragic manner. He had to inherit the farm early on. He wanted to learn, and we were able to help. Stuff like this happens because they get inspired because of the awards. And by getting inspired, if I post something, we are celebrating one thing. My coach in Brewers Cup said to me when he was competing in barista, I'm like, why do you celebrate? He's like, because I don't want to be rude to the rest. I'm like, if I was second place or third place in the competition that you don't celebrate, I will feel that you don't care about the competition. And that is more insulting to me. If I celebrate, it's because I'm happy. But if I see somebody celebrating, it means that they care. And caring is what is the most valuable thing about this. And if you post, you care. And if you post, you are also, what I'm trying to do when I post is, of course, I'm celebrating. Of course, I am happy about it. Of course, I am bragging if I win. We worked hard for this. You know how many years of suffering my father had. I did too, but my father had the worst part. How many years of suffering my father had? Suffering for real, physical health. He got sick. He was broke. My grandfather was broke at the point. We were able, like, we had a lot of difficult moments in our life. So every moment that we celebrate one of these things, it means that all this hard work, everything, you know, came up to a good ending. And it's still not the ending, but I'm going to tell you a quick story. My father was in a very tough economical situation. He wasn't even able to work solely on coffee. He needed to do other jobs to be able to provide. I was in Panama. I was not able to finish the university in the United States. My sister was finishing the university in the United States partly on a scholarship, partly on my father's efforts, that he was in a very difficult situation. My father had cancer. During his time with cancer, he was able to attend Best of Panama on 2013 and 2014 with cancer, where he was copying on a side table on his own because he was under chemo and he was very delicate, so he could not get any disease on him because he was very delicate. So he was separated, copying the coffee side by side with the international judges. Nick knows what I'm talking about of copying side by side. So my father, uh, in the year 2015, my sister's graduating from university in the University of Florida on May 2015. And then we find out that her graduation is the same weekend as the Best of Panama announcements. So my father stays until half of the Best of Panama. And after 2 years with cancer, there, copying, even with the difficulties he had copying, he traveled to see his daughter graduating. I stayed in the Best of Panama. And in the same time, parallel, when my sister was receiving her award, I was there with my uncle receiving the Best of Panama Cup, the one that we won this year. In 2022 is the third one we win. That one was the first one we won. We won the Panama Cup parallel to the moment my sister was graduating. And my father, after suffering from disease and after suffering from economical problems, he was getting to receive. He got cancer free 4 months before that moment. So yes, of course we brag. Of course we get celebrated. Of course, you know how I saw my father sick. I didn't know what's gonna happen. I don't talk much about it. He doesn't talk much about it, but I didn't know what was gonna happen. And you know what? When my father was sick, producers, the Petersons, the Coiners, and many other producers approached me and said, anything you need when your father's gonna be in the United States, we are here. Don't hesitate to ask. So that community always existed. But the celebration thing also is a marketing thing. When you celebrate, if we have an auction coming up, if we have an award, the auction is probably going to do better if we didn't have an award. But right, it's also inspiring to producers, and it's also inspiring to Panamanians. In this country, people is happier for the coffee accomplishments than producers in Panama know. Producers in Panama live in Boquete, and they don't spend too much time in Panama City. And I do Panama City and Boquete more. When I'm in Panama City, I can tell that people is proud of reading the news. People think that people only like to read bad news. But no, when people read something positive about coffee, they get engaged. And we were doing some metrics with some of the media here in Panama, and the metrics of those news is always high, always high. People likes to read good news about their country.
Yeah, absolutely. And this it's very inspiring, Wilford. Thank you so much for enlightening and bringing so much background to what a lot of people might have heard and might know a little bit of that story, but I think you really gave us a very good and in-depth perspective, and especially loved the last the invite to celebrate, and there's more behind things than sometimes you see, right? And everybody has their own suffering, their own journey, and then it comes to fruition, and being happy, as you say, and celebrating is also honoring that, and not kind of throwing it away or because of some other beliefs. So Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Watch the documentary. Please watch the documentary. Higher Grounds. That's the name of the documentary.
Yeah, Higher Grounds. Yeah.
Yeah. I think something to conclude: the coffee from Panama, specialty coffee from Panama, the Peterson's discovery, the best of Panama creation, the Geisha prices in the auction. Mm-hmm. It's a direct impact on other coffees around the world. Auctions around the world are so much more better than it was years before. I think people need to remember that this is not a competition. Everybody, it's getting. I think it was you, the one that said the tide rises, everybody else rises together. How is it?
Rising tide raises all the ships.
So we are all in this. Everybody, there's 25 million families in coffee. There's majority are suffering. So with the good, it's the best possible way to help everybody else live. So let's not compete and let's not talk about other coffees. Let's try to embrace and celebrate every coffee accomplishment in the world, not only for Panama, not only for Central America, and not only on the producer side, also on the consumer side. Let's celebrate every good thing about coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I fully agree.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Coffee and Technology Podcast. To learn more about Cropster, subscribe to this podcast and follow us on social media. For more educational content, visit cropster.com/learn.